got a special guest on the podcast. Undefeated pro fighter, David, the Nigerian we got undefeated professional fighter, rising prospect in Ontario MMA, Justin Condie on the podcast. Justin, say what's up to the fans of the Lake Kick.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on the air, and I'm looking forward to chit-chatting and going over some topics and the fights there from last night.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, slightly to his right, we have the Sleeping Beauty, Jeremy, Bone Crusher Asiffo. Mike, if you want to just go into the other room, tap him on the shoulder or something, let him know we're recording. Just above him, we have the best African warlord I'm currently familiar with, Michael Joseph Coney Asiffo. It never gets old. It never gets old.
It
never gets old. It never gets old.
It's never going to catch up.
Bro, you look like Joseph Coney. Just accept it, my brother, okay? Just get it. And above him to our left is some guy named David. You know, he's got a few risque opinions, but we love him. And we are the Leg Kick Podcast.
Well, another thing you forgot about, my good friend, King Condie, is well-versed kickboxer, a national champion at one point. So David is a Muay Thai guy. That's going to be you, man. I'm telling you. Very well-versed in kickboxing, but also not to play with on the ground, as his first fight proved to everybody. He ain't no joke there. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of point that out. But anyway, how are you guys today? Everyone's good? Everyone's blessed?
Bueno. Long night. That was a long night of cards. Long night of fights. I saw some tweet that said it was like 8 hours, which might be actually a record for a UFC card. And you know me, I was there watching the first prelim, so It was a long night.
Why do you do that to yourself?
Oh, man, I have no life. I think that's it. I have no life, and I'm just obsessed.
Man, from top to bottom, phenomenal card. I've got to say, all 3 title fights delivered. Once again, I feel like certain members of the Athletic Commission should be fired. But what a night of fights. You guys want to start with some news and then get into it, and then we'll shoot the feces?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm fatigued. I just want to say I went to bed at like 3 or like 4 a.m.
By Dana White when he tried to put on these fights. So I just want to say all of you were wrong and I was right. But yeah, go ahead with the news.
Damn, Jeremy. Why you got to rub it in?
Jeez.
Can't we just forget that you were wrong?
You know, in fairness, though, he was the only one for Fight Island, like completely for it. Everyone else was pretty.
I'm the only one for putting on fights during COVID, trying to do the proper health and everything like that. But it's okay. I'll step down off my high horse so we can start this podcast.
I'm still against Fight Island, even more so now, just to be clear. But you know what?
I would really like to see some outdoors. I would like to see some sun.
It's because of Fight Island that we still have content, guys.
I do like the content.
It's not the Fight Island. It's not the Fight Island that we wanted, but it's the Fight Island that we got. Okay.
It's the Fight Island we deserve.
It's barely even an island. First of all, it's like if I were to dig a moat around myself outside and then pour water into it and be like, guys, check out this sweet island I've just acquired.
It's
pretty much. It would be like if you.
It's Yas Island. It's Yas Queen Island.
It'd be like if you dug out your garden and then you walked into like a pond and then just or like a puddle and dumped a bunch of sand in it. Like that's pretty much. Although shouts out them though. It's not.
Listen.
Building an island is not a joke.
We're all just a little upset because Jeremy was right and we were wrong. But I'm really curious to see what news Mike has, because he might have mentioned Will Smith. And,
okay.
The memes have been phenomenal.
Is my new favorite word. I just want to point that out right now. Entanglement is my new favorite word, along with August.
As the representative of white guilt on the podcast, can I just ask what the hell you're talking about?
Okay. All right. Yes. So, let's take this back to, I want to say a week ago. A R&B artist by the name of August Alsina. For anyone who doesn't know him, he's basically the fourth guy on Hold You Down, that one song DJ Khaled put out, the one that was responsible for like 80 babies in that calendar day. But yeah, basically August Alsina came out when he was promoting his new album saying that he was donkey bleeping Jada Pinkett Smith, and Will Smith was okay with it. That's what happened, right? And everyone was like, what is going on? We need to know about it. And so Jada Pinkett Smith has a podcast called The Red Table Talk. For everyone who doesn't know, probably up until this point, the episode with the most views was when, remember when Tristan Thompson cheated on one of the Kardashians? I can't remember her name. And they brought the girl who he cheated on her with onto that podcast to talk about it. That's the show I'm talking about.
Justin, by the way, this is an MMA podcast.
Yeah,
I promise you this is an MMA podcast. But also, don't cheapen it like that. The Red Table Talk series is actually one of the more popular series when it comes to covering hip hop culture as well. Like they have a lot of like classic.
All right. So get to the point where Jada Smith entrapped Will Smith or whatever.
Okay, so
who cares about the culture?
Listen, I'll tell about this. I'll talk about this. Basically, Will Smith comes on the podcast, and they talk about this development that August Alsina was basically, piping down his wife with Will Smith's blessing. Like let's call it what it is. He was piping down his wife. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. He was piping down his wife. But Will Smith got her to basically admit to everybody in the world that she was cheating on him with August Alsina without her blessing. And she's tried to like skirt around it by using that famous line, I was in an entanglement with August Alsina. That's why I want to put it on the news, because from now on, I'm going to use entanglement to describe my relationships.
Once again, I think part of the issue is because Jada's Pinkett Smith is number one, like 40 something, and August Alsina is 27. When he first got in contact with the Smiths, the reason he actually got in contact with them was because he was in a super dark place, going through like depression, and these people essentially took him in as a son because he's of similar age to their son and daughter, Willow and Jaden Smith.
Oh, so, he was in a dark place, all right. He was entangled in a dark place. I'll tell you that.
But the question then is, and obviously there's been rumors that Will and Jada have had an open relationship for ages. So I think the reason this is a big deal is because it kind of got exposed, but
so how does Kevin Lee fit into all this?
That's exactly that's my question.
That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out. All right, next topic, because like we actually have to hurry this along.
Hilarious. No, we're not even gonna ask. Okay, would you be in an open marriage?
Fine.
Oh, David.
Let's ask everybody. No.
All right.
Well, let's do this. Maybe later. We'll save that for story time.
Hey, Justin, would you be in an open marriage? No, I'm kidding. I'm largely joking.
All right.
Okay. Next topic. LeBron, he opts to not have a social justice name on his jersey. This is actually the one I kind of want to talk about because, as everyone knows, the NBA is actually going to allow their players to have social justice messages on the back of their jerseys for when the NBA restarts. And it was like this big kind of, applaud to the NBA for actually allowing guys to kind of speak their minds. Like a lot of people were praising them. But then Jaylen Brown came out and said, yeah, the options are kind of trash. And, you saw the options and they were not good. And LeBron has decided not to, actually go with a name. And a lot of people are upset. So, yeah, that's kind of.
Can I tell you exactly why I don't care?
Why don't you care? Because it's bad.
Because it's about black people. Oh, what? Oh.
Well, clearly, I'm not a big fan of black people.
Hilarious. I know. That's why you do a podcast with 3 of them.
But yeah, man. It's first of all, it's the NBA. It's basketball. We all know how much I care about basketball. But at the same time, it's like I'm not exactly. I don't really care what these major corporations have to say about these issues because they're just trying to commodify it, repackage it, and sell it back to you. And to be honest, I don't even really care what athletes have to say on it. Like, is LeBron James a public policy expert? I don't think so. Does he have anything interesting to say on the subject? Not
Yes,
really.
Yes, he does.
Actually,
Yes,
Oh, I
that's
guess
one
you
of
know
the
what?
things
That's
yeah,
fair.
no,
He
that's
may
one
have.
of the things I wouldn't
He
be
may have.
with
He
you.
may, that's
But like, I
no,
get
no.
what
You're
you're
right.
saying.
You're right. Because he may have lived.
I get the point
Right?
you
So
are trying to make.
that's fair. But I think as far as like him speaking as like an extension of the corporation of the whatever the hell team he plays for, the Kentucky Bobcats, as far as I know. But like
hilarious.
I don't care what corporations have to say about social issues. Sorry, not a big fan.
I would disagree and agree. I think it is important to know where corporations stand on social issues, but also it doesn't really matter because, they're always going to protect their corporate interests, period. Just to say about LeBron James, I think, apart from being a figurehead in terms of, black consciousness in North America, I think the important part is he also does a lot of investment into the community. He's actually built his own school specifically for marginalized populations. So like he has a little bit of skin in the game. So
That's fair. I didn't know about that. I can see.
I actually agree with Stefano though, and I think that he should be within his right not to put whatever on his jersey because like the whole idea of like a list of approved statements just weirds me out in general.
Yeah,
like, if
that's
you
the
really
thing I
want,
didn't like.
yeah,
Like if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna do a message, let them do whatever message they want, and then we'll really see what's going on.
yeah, really.
Like because then it's
J.R. Smith is gonna come out with something crazy written on his jersey.
I'd like to see what Meta World Peace came up with on his jersey if he was still playing.
Retired for years.
okay, all right.
Hey, how about
I have a great segue for this. I actually have a great segue for this. So Meta World Peace, Malice in the Palace, UFC 251 was also a Malice in a Palace. No, okay.
Mike, I'm gonna need you to settle down there.
Yeah.
Okay, man.
So,
Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on LeBron?
I think I do care about what these corporations do think because they lobby for which laws they want pushed. Votes aren't about people; they're about money. So the more money you have, the more votes you get. So I think I actually do care what these corporations think and are putting their money towards. And I think LeBron is a leader. So whatever he does is what we're going to talk about, what we're going to focus on, and what we're going to get behind. So I actually support him not putting anything on his jersey because it's what we're talking about, and it lets you know that there's more to be said. There's more. It tells people who aren't as knowledgeable about the plight of African Americans that there's more than just say her name, and there's more than just all these like little token slogans that people try and put on their social media just to get retweets or just to seem like they're for the cause. So, like, being a leader. So I think I do actually care about what he has to say and what he thinks about these issues.
As far as the corporations go, though, I don't think the NBA is personally lobbying for any change regarding like
the owners are.
It's more like say her name, now available at Walmart for $25.99.
No, the sick part is if they start selling the jersey.
I think the owners lobby for certain tax levies and things like that.
I wanted to, Mike. Do we have any other news?
No, that was it. I just wanted to say entanglement and donkey. I swore. But I just want to say those two things on the air. And
I just wanted to segue into this and just ask Justin a little bit something to get his take about that Jose Aldo fight. So we saw the old Aldo back in the sense that he was throwing leg kicks, standing upright with that reactive head movements, bringing back those beautiful Dutch kickboxing combos. What do you think we saw there? As far as, do you think this was an Aldo past his prime, or do you think maybe we saw the best of Aldo and Peter Yan is just that good?
Going into that fight, especially in the fight world, a lot of times you see the promotions throw the old lions against the new lions, right? To kind of promote and build a star. So it was kind of that's kind of how I was viewing the fight at first. I really want to see the first exchange with Aldo, just because I knew that was his second time at that weight class, and he is getting up there. He has had a long career. So for me, whenever he took the first combo from Yan, whenever I seen he was able to take it on the chin and keep moving forward, I knew that Aldo was in the right mindset for that fight, and you could just see with the way he was moving forward, using his combination, setting up that low kick, and even going for that takedown at the end of the first round, even though it didn't go his way. You've seen him implying a strong strategy and a strong game, so you could see his head was in the fight. So definitely, Aldo is found a place. I don't know how much longer he'll be able to go, but you can see his chin still there, his mind still there, and I think it was the second round or third round. He took that body shot and he winced, and I thought it might be a rib or something like that, but whatever it was, he got back up. He put a game face on and he moved forward, and yeah, it was nice to see him come out and put on a good show. He got finished, but he had his hands full with the young lion, right? Old lion, young lion, and the cardio, just the youth is what I feel what helped push him across the edge in those final 2 rounds.
See, that was the thing to me, is that when I was looking at that fight, one of the notes I had when I was watching it back again was that I thought Aldo won rounds 2 and 3, in my opinion, and a lot of times it was because he was kicking the legs down and Jan was having trouble checking it, or Aldo has a great straight to the body and a great liver punch, and he was going to that, and he was doing these things that like veterans of the game do, like only veterans of the game do. So.
I agree.
I just want to get your think on.
Yeah,
I definitely found his for sure. Definitely found his.
I thought they both looked phenomenal in this fight, and to me, we like Justin said, we've seen some of these fights where the UFC will feed their old dogs to the new young lion in order to make a name off of them, right? In order for like Jan to get that rub off of Aldo. But I thought this was competitive, a lot more competitive than people thought it would be, and. Man, for when I saw this fight, I saw 2 fighters having to adapt their strategy to what the other person was doing. Aldo having to go to the body more in the mid rounds, right? Going for that takedown. Jan switching to southpaw to avoid the low kicks. I thought there was everything you could ask for in a title fight, except a decent stoppage.
Yeah, it was really hard to watch, and it was funny because as I think it was just before they called the fight, it was Michael Bisping was saying, like a real fighter, man, like we're not in there because we want to hand it over to them, right? We're in there because we're gonna fight till the last bit, right? So it's really the referee's discretion, sometimes holding off, some guys can come back and find their footing again, but he was on the ground covering up, just taking shots for at least 45 seconds longer than I thought he should have been. And but that's the game, there's a winner and a loser, and there's 2 sides to the coin, man, and you gotta be ready to face both sides whenever it comes your way, and that's just the game.
So okay, as a fighter, I gotta ask your opinion on this. Is that what would you rather a ref who kind of lets you go a little, like 2 punches too late, or would you rather a ref who's like kind of on the ball and if anything stops it a little early? Like what's still you want your ref to obviously be attentive. I think that's definitely the whole point. But would you rather a ref who gives you more rope, more leeway, or the other way?
As a fighter, I like it, because critically thinking, you're like, save your brain for another day, live to fight another day. But when you're in those moments and you have that switch, like even like my pro fight, my first one, I got caught in a crucifix. He dropped me with the right hand. I got caught. I dropped down. He put me in a really bad position, had both my arms locked, just raining elbows and punches. And to be honest with you, there was probably like a good 20 seconds. I don't really remember. Like, I remember getting punched and I remember kind of coming to, and, I'm watching the fight and the ref, I'm like, oof, that ref came close a couple times. And eventually, I took a big deep breath, stayed calm in a really crazy situation, found my way out and ended up winning the fight. I choked him unconscious, but I look back at that and it's like, what, I'm really happy that ref gave me the time, because if he didn't give me that time, I wouldn't have been able to shine in the end, right? And as a fighter, you want to keep going no matter what, right? So it is what it is.
I think I'm mostly in agreement with you, and I was in a similar situation in my last fight to yours, where I got dropped 2 or 3 times in the first round, depending on what you call being dropped, and managed to come back and win by sub. And I ate like, you know, a significant amount of punches, probably more than should have been allowed. And I'm grateful now for being allowed that opportunity to come back. And I think all of us celebrate. Mike always says it, you know, we hate bad stoppages, but we celebrate come from behind victories, right? And I think in most cases, you know, there's a little gray area of I can understand the ref wanting to give the fighter, especially in a title fight, every opportunity to come back. For me, though, the Aldo fight was, what do you want to see? Do you want to see this man's brain coming out of his ear in order, like, where is your cue? Because I think there's a gray area, and for me, the Aldo Jan fight far surpassed that gray area.
Yeah, that was just a beat down. Like I said, there was 45 seconds of that fight where, you know, you could just, he was done. He was tired. His cardio was diminished, and he was basically, all he was doing at that point was just trying to protect himself from any further damage. And you can say a title fight, 5 rounds. You know, Aldo, he's got this long career. He's a killer, and you don't want to just kind of throw the towel in on him because you know who he is. But again, too, I say, you know, you never want them to throw the towel in on you, but there's definitely situations as a fighter you'll look back at it and you'll be like, well, I can understand, right? Like, as long as you're level-headed and you keep your ego out of it, it's really only for your best interests. Even though you have that fighter's heart and you're willing to die for it, you know, that's why they have refs, right? Because, you know, they're there to protect you from yourself mostly, right? Like, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think as far as comparing this to the Anthony Smith stoppage? I know this one's fresh in our mind, and MMA fans tend to have a bit of a recency bias.
And
I think it's worse.
I would agree.
The thing about it is, number one, I think Jason Herzog as a ref has proven that he's actually a top echelon ref. I'd probably put him at like 3rd or 4th, depending on your opinion of Keith Peterson. But I think the problem with the Anthony Smith one was that Anthony Smith was still doing things, like doing fighter things. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't like shelling up. He wasn't like, he was doing fighter things. Whereas with this one, Aldo was just basically shelling up into a fetal position for the better part of a minute and a half. You know, I thought this one was worse. And I'm not necessarily calling for Leon Roberts' job or anything like that, but this was bad.
That's where we disagree.
I think it's a fine line if you're a referee. It must be so tough in terms of deciding when to call it, because you want to give the fighter an opportunity to fight out, especially when it's a legend like Jose Aldo. But, you know, also you have to protect the fighter as well. So I don't know. It's tough to be like, oh, because he made one. I don't know the guy's history, but because he made one mistake, like he shouldn't be reffing any more fights. I don't think it was egregious enough for him to never ref again. But Aldo was definitely getting beat up at the end.
You know what I think we can't. Oh, go on.
Oh, again, I was just going to kind of say about that. Like, you know, the refs have a hard job. You know, it's even if you just watch people sparring in the gym, sometimes you'll see some good matches go down in the gym, and you know your heart's going and your adrenaline's going. Like, those refs are in there feeling that energy just as much as those fighters are, and they can hear the crowd, and you know they have a tough job. But and in the end, like, you know, as a fighter, you know, me, like, I know what I'm signing up for. I know what I'm walking into, right? So if I get put into those scenarios, you know, that is what it is. You know, I can't point the finger at anybody, because in reality, if I ended up there, it's because I made a mistake somewhere to begin with, right? Just because I got my face pounded in doesn't mean it's this guy's fault, because it's a sport, it's a professional sport, and you should be able to protect yourself and, you know, make coherent choices. And if you're caught in a position like that, it's your fault. And yeah.
I just also wanted to add that also, how many times have we seen the opposite, where a referee calls it too early and the fighter goes absolutely ballistic too? So it just makes it much tougher to make a decision in the moment like that. But, you know, they're paid to do this, though, so
I would say, yeah, what I would say is while I do agree with Justin that it's your fault for being there in the first place, the job of the referee is that when you are no longer intelligently defending yourself, it's time to call it. And I think what we shouldn't do after this is nothing. And I feel like that's what usually happens with mixed martial arts. We talk about this for a week, maybe a week and a half, right? There's a little bit of buzz around it, and then you know what? On to the next events, right? Maybe if we're not calling for Leon Roberts to be fired, and that's a little bit extreme, maybe we review it. Maybe we review why this happened, right? Maybe
I think the biggest thing is just training, and a lot of the best referees are ex-fighters because they can be in those moments. They can handle that adrenaline. They can see what for example, like Kate Winslow won't see, right? Like they have some referees.
That's a name I haven't heard in years.
Oh God, but you know what I mean? Like they have
Yeah.
referees that have no martial arts experience or no, they're just some government employee that, okay, the rules, you read the book, go in there and let these two animals, fight and try to, control it. Like referees like Herb Dean and stuff like that. They've been in some controversy, but I feel like they really do their job well because they are ex-martial artists themselves. They've been there. They know what it's like. They know what to look for. They can look in that fighter's eye and see if he's gone or if he's not, and really make an educated decision in those scenarios where someone's getting punched out and he's not doing anything.
My question for you guys who are fighting, and I know you said I shouldn't do the Stefano, but whatever, there's no rules. For you guys who are fighting in the regional series scene, do you find that the referees that ref your fights have that martial arts experience, or especially when it comes to BJJ? Because I remember Big Dan telling the story how like there were some guys who were reffing who had never fought before and didn't understand anything about it.
It's hard to say. Like my last referee was Big Dan Merliata, right? So I felt, I should feel pretty safe with Big Dan. Come on, Big Dan.
You always do this to Big Dan. Why Big Dan?
Because he let me get punched in the back of the head 15 times. There, I said it.
Okay.
He's a nice guy, though. Nice guy. Very nice guy. But Mike remembers, for one of our last cards, we had to literally explain to the referee what a toe hold was.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, I'm in the back, I'm coaching that night, and I'm like, yeah, our toe holds allowed. He's like, what? Like grabbing the toes and pulling them back? No, you can't do that. And the look of everyone in the room was just like...
Everyone had a freak out. Like, everyone...
We're like, someone's going to die.
Man, it'll always forever be etched in my mind where Dorian Dakash literally has to, like, go on the floor, do a knee and show him what's going on. Like, this is what I want to do.
It really runs the gamut based on athletic commission, based on where you are, based on, who the promoters have decided to hire that night. And it's a decision that shouldn't be taken lightly. Like, as Justin said, some martial arts experience should be a prerequisite. If you're not an ex-fighter, then, maybe you've trained BJJ for X amount of time, or at least you're a big fan of the sport that understands this. With some of these referees, I get the feeling that not only have you not trained, but you're not even a fan of the sport. And I'm not referring to Leon Roberts or anyone else like that. Maybe that gentleman who didn't know what a toe hold is, but like the fact that can exist to me, it blows my mind.
Right, but like I've always been of the opinion that I don't know. You guys can chime in after I kind of make this point of there should be. How fighters have post-fight interviews and they get like a sheet of paper. I used to work in media, so I know it. Like you get a sheet of paper, you get some stats, and you read the stats, and you ask like the coach or the player, and in this case the fighters about like what's going on here. Why not have the refs also do some post-fight interviews too, and like have them break down why they made decisions? And sometimes you'll get like one of the interesting things was remember when Herb Dean made a mistake with Ben Askren and Robbie Lawler? Clearly it was a mistake, right?
Disagree. Not a mistake.
I think Robbie Lawler was gonna go out, but you gotta let him go out, right? But anyway.
Hold on. If my arm goes from here to here,
it'd be like the refs filling out a police report. Like I know in football, I know in the NCAA, refs get graded 2 on like what they saw, and their superiors check out like their calls and see if they and it affects like if they get to do bigger games and all things like that. Like, do MMA refs go through that kind of procedure?
No, and that's the thing, right? Why not have Herb Dean break things down every once in a while? I'm not saying he has to go on in front of a camera and be like, and talk to Brett Archimoto every event. But what I'm saying though is, have them reason why they had to do things. Like maybe if Leon says something, then you're like, okay, what are we missing? What did you see? Right? Let's go forward.
If I can say
Sorry.
something.
Go ahead.
Why they wouldn't I like the whole idea of accountability, but I can see two reasons why they wouldn't. Number one, just because you were good at doing something doesn't make you good at explaining something. So you might in the moment make the right decision, but afterwards when you come to actually explain your decision, you might not be able to articulate it in a way that makes sense.
That.
I don't buy that.
I think that logic applies to athletes. I don't think that logic applies to referees.
Why not?
Because as a referee, you have to justify everything that you've done.
No, you don't. We just said that they don't have to justify everything. Everything should be justified, but we just showed that you don't have to justify anything. So, I'm just saying that, and even if it is justified, my point is the articulation of that in terms of explaining yourself could get you in more trouble than you had initially planned. And number two, referees are some of the most hated people in all sports. We have this debate in soccer all the time about, you made such a bad decision. Why isn't the referee interviewed? Or even in basketball. And we've even gone to a point where basketball refs are literally reviewing the last 2 minutes or every decision they make in the last 2 minutes and coming out with a report. And even that doesn't please people. Even then, people are still vilifying referees. So it's kind of a lose game.
I'd say the difference.
Yourself, you get hate. You don't explain yourself, you get hate. But I do agree with accountability.
I'd say the difference is when the Los Angeles clown whatevers play the Sacramento, Raccoons.
Oh, you're so close.
The consequence of losing a game is not as high as the consequences of Jose Aldo not being able to remember his kids' names when he's 50.
Okay. What about football?
Football, the consequences are as great. But
it's the same argument applies there, though.
No,
I would agree.
Day, you are affecting livelihoods.
Football,
Chris Webber's not going to get a Hall of Fame jacket right now because he didn't beat the Lakers in the finals. And why? Because Joey Crawford called 10 extra calls that were chintzy at best, right? So I understand. You need to. Here's the thing. I'm just trying to say is, we have the stats, we have the camera, and let's And for the record, judges are not absolved from this too. Judges, I think, need to also get in front of a camera and talk about these things too. Let's get some guys accountable for why they did things, and if they misspeak, then whatever. Let's have them make a statement the next day. No one's trying to jump down people's throats. We just want an answer as to why you let Jose Aldo take 45 unanswered blows for 45 seconds as he's in a fetal position. Some of them in the back of the head, by the way, but whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of which, as far as judges go, I can't think of a group that has less visibility to the public and less accountability. Segue, Max Holloway taking on Alexander Volkanovski. What do you guys think? Good decision, bad decision?
I want to let our guest get the floor on that one.
It really comes down to me was that third round, that middle round. Could have went both ways, right? Max came out with a really good strategy. The first 2 rounds, Volkanovski kind of started off a little slow, but I feel like the switch was kind of in the third round, halfway through when he started turning it up, and then the fourth and fifth, obviously, he kind of just took off with. So it really all depends on your view in that third round for me. I feel like Volkanovski did do enough to win it. Like I said, Max looked great in the first 2 rounds, but I definitely think there should be a trilogy fight for sure. It was close. I know Volkanovski is saying he's not interested in it, but it was a good fight. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't mind seeing it again.
Yeah, I agree that It was a great fight, and I think it warrants a trilogy. And I think Max performed a lot better than a lot of us were expecting. Like the big conversation was, this guy's training over Zoom. It doesn't seem like he's speaking like he's made the right
For the record, I
adjustments.
don't believe that for a second. He was definitely not.
He was, yeah, he came out with a completely different game plan, throwing kicks and then proceeding into punching range. Like after his kicks, like to cut off Volkanovski's movements. He looked great. At the time I thought it was a robbery, especially because of the first 2 rounds, how significant they were with Holloway. I'd be open to watching it again though. I think I can understand why Volkanovski wouldn't want a trilogy fight, because good judging, bad judging or not, the division in a sense has to move on.
Yeah.
Man, okay. The thing about it is that when I first watched it, I was, I was vocal. I was on Instagram and I was like, someone has to convince me 3 rounds that Alexander Volkanovski won. Like, you can't tell me he won 3 rounds. And then I watched it again, and that 3rd round is the one where I think everyone, has a, what do you call it? Like, I guess a crisis of confidence in deciding a clear winner. Because rounds 1 and 2, I think everyone says it's Holloway, and I don't think that's a discussion. If anyone says differently, they're a disgrace, and they need to be, and they should not be judging any kind of MMA fight. And you know what? While we're at it, refund them their money because they should not be watching an MMA fight in general. And same for 4 and 5 for Alexander Volkanovski. Now that I watched it back, I think it's the 3rd round where people really have that discussion, and I think it can go either way. But this is the problem with MMA, and I think I've said it like 80 times on this podcast, is depending on what you value, you can say Volkanovski won because Volkanovski came in with I think, in my opinion, the more significant of the strikes in round 3, especially towards the end. But Max Holloway definitely landed more total strikes and more significant strikes in general. So it's interesting. And I also think that in terms of judges too, is that judges, they have to make one call on one look that they saw one time from like a bird's eye view. And, they have to now make a decision on what they value based on that without any looks at stats, instant replays, or getting to go back and watch it. Right?
That's fair enough. You have to make that call in the moment and stick with it as a judge. I agree. What do you guys think about Holloway's game plan coming into this?
It's definitely interesting. Like you said, he had to kind of cut him off. He was doing a really great job at that. It was definitely a different approach. Like you said, you could tell just within the first couple of exchanges, he wasn't just training on Zoom, because even as a fighter, you're watching some of the countering he was doing. He was on point. He was catching him coming in, and he was definitely did well. But then Volkanovski made that switch up and just started hammering down the last 2 rounds, and I don't know, it was interesting to watch.
Yeah, it felt like Volkanovski, like I said with the previous fight, Volkanovski kind of had to adapt on the fly in here and relied a little bit more on wrestling in the later rounds. I remember him hitting that beautiful inside trip.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing too that kind of gets to me too about the whole judging and making mixed martial arts a sport is now it's all point driven, right, and round by round. And I think what really matters the most is who is on top at the end of the fight, who is finishing strong, right? Like first round, obviously, take some consideration, but if someone's winning the last 2 rounds, if you're looking at that fight, he's the winner. He won. He beat that guy's ass. Maybe not beat him, but he definitely was getting the better of him. So, even like the Rose fight with Jessica Andrade, that was a great fight of a slugger versus a very technical outside stick and move. And she got caught once. I can't remember if it was the 2nd or 3rd round, but then that gave her the split. But again, I feel like Rose dominated that entire fight, yet she wins by split just because she lands 1 or 2 good shots, drops her, bloodies her up a little bit, even though I still think it was a unanimous despite the heavy blows.
Yeah, do you think that fight would have gone, had it gone 5 rounds? I think
at the time. I think that was like the fourth title of the fight, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great fight. I actually thought that was a unanimous victory for Rose. Myself. Back on the Holloway fight, that was the one fight that I didn't really watch in that much detail, and I haven't really had much time to go back and rewatch it. But man,
Hilariously, why there was a hilarious story as to why.
hilarious story. But anyway, the what's it called? Volkanovski's just so good, man. Just so good. I like the way he mixes up kickboxing and wrestling in just a really creative way. I don't know. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Who's next for him in the division? And tell me why it's Shansung John.
That division is so stacked, like 35, 45, 55, and you can make an argument 70. All have just talent brimming in there. 45. There's Korean Zombie, Ortega. I still think Zabit is
I'm pulling up the rankings.
Next,
sorry.
I'm pulling up the rankings.
Yeah.
My favorite fighters, to be honest with you. I love watching him fight.
Man, Yair is the Taekwondo guy for me, right? I love see if anyone makes Taekwondo legit in MMA, I'm like, yeah. So Yair's my guy, and then Josh Emmett can't even get a snip of the top 5, and he's killing everyone who walks right now. So
also don't forget on Wednesday we have Dan Ige versus Calvin Kattar, which is
and Kattar,
a crazy fight for a midweek fight.
Kattar destroyed Jeremy Stevens the other night. Back in May with an elbow.
Dan Ige is no joke. He's nice too.
Yeah, man.
Let's go down this list because I think this is an interesting division for I want to see some of these guys get into the mix. Korean Zombie number 2, I think that goes without saying. Then we got Max Holloway at number 3, Zabit at number 4, and he's already booked against Yair. So
is that confirmed?
That's
for
confirmed.
August? Okay.
Then we've got Calvin Kattar at 6, Emmett at 7, Ryan Ortega coming in at 8.
What?
That's disrespectful.
That's disrespectful. He's lost one fight.
I know. I think it's due to inactivity though.
Okay.
He hasn't fought in 2 years.
Fair.
And then we got Jeremy Stevens at number 9, Dan Ige at 10. Wow, how is Jeremy Stevens at 9 above Dan Ige? That makes no sense. Jeremy Stevens
always facing tough competition. Like he's facing.
Are you sure that's an up-to-date ranking? Because my ranking is completely different.
No, yours is not up to date. This is the latest on Topology. Yeah, Jeremy Stevens. It's showing that he's lost.
He lost to Jose Aldo.
He lost his last 4 and had a no contest in there as well. So
yeah, because the eye thing with Yair Rodriguez. So he lost to Yair Rodriguez, Jose Aldo, Zabit Magomed Sharipov. Those are like 3 of the best guys that division had.
I agree, but is it enough to get you ranked above Dan Ige,
Dan Ige's last 2 fights have been chintzy at best. Like in my opinion, I still think he lost to Edson Barbosa.
Right? I agree. But do you know what's better than winning a chintzy fight?
What?
Oh, sorry. Do you know what's worse than winning a chintzy fight? Rather.
Oh yeah, again
losing. Yeah, getting knocked out and losing 4 on the trot. Like, no disrespect, he definitely deserves to be ranked highly. I just question the decision to rank him above Shane Burgos and Dan Ige.
Okay.
And Arnold Allen, who's,
He's nice.
He's nice, yeah.
And then, whoa, I'm not going to let you play my boy Sadiq and stuff like
Super
that.
Sadiq,
Don't do that.
Hey, man, Sadiq, here's the thing with Sadiq, though, strength of schedule matters. And this is where we had that argument on Leon Edwards yesterday, where it's like, who has he really fought,
I don't know. I'm going to pull up his record right now while we try to get, Stefano back on.
Oh, yeah.
He lost for anybody else?
Man. Well, okay. I guess let me segue over to the main event for a second before we go into, we get back to the divisions. I guess anybody can answer this. Kamaru Usman defeats Jorge Masvidal. I think 49-46 on 2 scorecards 149-46 and 250-45s. Gentlemen, let me throw this to you. Is Kamaru Usman approaching GOAT status of welterweights, all-time welterweights?
Um, I don't know. I feel like it's a little too early. You know,
Premature.
yeah, like I feel like the big thing with the UFC, it's so glitz and glam now, and they want to have a star and they want to, pump people up, and it's so premature with what they're doing, and to call him that right now is a little too early, and especially against his performance against the Jorge last night. Jorge came off 6 days notice, and I feel like he did very well, other than the fact that Usman kind of just smothered him against the fence, and didn't really do very much. I don't know. I think it's premature. He definitely doesn't deserve it yet.
I would tend to agree, just because of the fact that to be considered, what you call him, a legend or something, or what was the word you used?
Goat, eh?
A GOAT. To be considered a GOAT, you'd have to. It depends on your record, but then it also depends on, like, you have to have those one or two dominant performances. And this wasn't. This was a good showing. He definitely. It was definitely. Uh, I'm looking for the word deciding or whatever.
Decisive.
It was a decisive victory, but you have to have those one or two like dominant performances to be considered a goal in my eyes.
To shoot him some bail. Sorry, I'm just an Usman fan, being Nigerian, obviously.
You're a stan.
I'm a stan.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna own up. I'm a stan. I do think it's a little early for GOAT status, just because. Yeah, I think there's just so many people that have come before him and have put way more work in. What's his record? Like 17-1. Compare that to like GSP's record, or like
I'm pretty sure
Matt,
his record is 19-2 or something like that.
what?
He's not that far away. Yeah, like
Oh,
that's why. Yeah, it's pretty.
fair enough. But I feel
It's
for some
more
reason
so
then.
the reign, though, like the title challenges, right? Like GSP and the people
Yeah,
he
he
faced.
faced Murderer's Row. Yeah, he definitely.
All of those title challenges that he had, like even though they didn't necessarily, were especially like Johnny Hendricks and stuff like that, right? He still faced the top everybody, start to finish. Yeah,
No, I remember that welterweight division was Murderer's Row when he was going
Yeah.
on. Like Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz. You know, there was a lot of guys. John Fitch, who I think is one of the most underrated fighters of all time.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it was
like that.
Murderer's Row.
GSP's record is 26-2. You psyched me
Oh,
out there for a second.
I-
You psyched me out there for a second. But Matt Serra's record is 11-7. So I think you have a point. Like, these guys weren't fighting for as long as I thought. But at the same time, I still think, you got to put some respect on Usman's name, because he's still fought like some really high level guys like Colby, RDA. He's beaten Leon Edwards. He's the only one in the UFC who's beaten Leon Edwards so far. Who else did he fight? His performance against Tyron Woodley was dominant as it gets. So I don't know. Even though it wasn't the most, and I've been seeing a lot of this online, because it wasn't the most exciting fight, but like this guy just came off giving you 5 rounds of like nail biting stuff with Colby, and you're telling him he's got to take a fight on 6 days
Man,
notice.
casual MMA fans are some of the most fickle fans on earth.
It's
Like,
crazy. Like, people are saying like like he sucks, and like I'm confused. Like, it's like, he's a wrestler. What do you expect him to do? Like,
man,
anyway.
I'll never forget how the first fight between Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Tyron Woodley is considered one of the greatest fights of all time, right? But no one remembers that because the second fight was such a dud, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird dichotomy, man.
It's almost like, what have you done for me lately? And it's, once again, I don't think it's the most boring. I don't even think it was the most boring fight of that card. And I know we're holding it to a higher level because of it's the main event, but I thought in terms of Masvidal, he came in with a lot of hype, a lot of trash talking, and at the end of the day, like, Kamaru was still pretty dominant, and he showed like there's levels to this wrestling thing. I thought Masvidal did well in terms of defending a lot of like his takedowns, but at the end of the day, he still got pretty much ground to the mats, right? So I don't know. Like, the question is who beats Usman, and unless it's almost like a Khabib thing, like unless you're either gonna like grapple with him and somehow keep up, or you're just gonna stop him from taking you down completely, which is easier said than done. Then how do you beat him? Because if he gets a hold of you and starts to do that, like grind you against the cage thing, like there's very few people, I think anyway, in the UFC, let alone like the division, who can like handle with that.
Yeah. You know, speaking on that boring point, like I want to get Justin's opinion on this because you got an interesting kind of style. You know, you're a guy who I would consider a hybrid, almost a true hybrid of the game because you know you got the fundamental kickboxing in your belt, right? But you're a willing grappler, right? So from your perspective, when you hear a lot of criticisms on Kamaru Usman's heavy grappling plan, what's your initial thoughts on that?
I think it was stated already, right? Like, he's a wrestler. What do you expect him to do against the striker, right? Like, you're gonna take him down. And it's just the thing for me in the wrestling, especially, he did do so well in the fact that he was able to hold him there and kind of just control the match in that aspect. But, if you're the more dominant wrestler, I would have liked to see, a little more shoot for the finish, right? There was a lot of just kind of stalling, stepping on the foot. Like, don't get me wrong, stepping on the foot is a smart thing to do, but if that's your main focus for the next 2 minutes, you're really, like I said, you really got to go for it. I don't criticize one bit to why he went to the wrestling to control the fight. It's MMA. If you can do it, why not? And it's allowed. It's in the rules. So, by all means, go there. But I feel like there was especially a couple areas where he could have really taken control because he was handling him very well on the ground.
Yeah. Do you think that? Oh, sorry.
Go on.
ahead.
No,
I was going to ask. Do you think that like it was Usman stalling or Masvidal defending so well that Usman just couldn't really get there? Like what? No,
Usman was punching him in the thigh. Like
you think it was stalling? Okay.
Hey, I have a defensive stalling. By the way, in case you were wondering, my computer crashed. No big deal. But my defensive stalling personally is that we have a limited time window in order with which to get this done, right? And if you can't stop me from holding you against the fence and punching you in the thigh for 30 minutes, I mean, that's your prerogative to get me off you, not the other way around. Now, I'm a boring fighter, so of course I'm going to defend Usman as another boring fighter, but I think if you watch some of the very old school Gracie fights, like you watch Helio Gracie fight, they're boring as hell. The first 30 minutes of the fight is Helio Gracie holding someone in open guard and gently kicking him with his heel to the kidneys, right? Why? Because grappling sometimes is like a fine wine. It takes time to work, right? And I'm sure all of you guys who have rolled out there have felt this. Sometimes you get into a roll or a wrestling match with somebody who's competitive with you, and nobody concedes a submission or a takedown for the entirety of a 5-minute round. It's difficult, and grappling takes time. And me personally, I think that's why I favor the first round being 10 minutes like they did in Pride, as a small concession to us grapplers. But I'm of the opinion that
not. Come on.
No.
We can debate that. But
Later episode.
In my opinion, I think it's the prerogative of whoever I'm holding down or holding up against the fence to get me off of them, regardless if it's entertaining or not for the fans.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I've definitely used that strategy once or twice too. Sometimes you don't go into a fight 100%. You find a moment where you're like, oh well, I control this scenario. He has no answer to this, right? So by all means, but I'm not really I don't consider myself a high level grappler. So if I'm able to control you in an area and land some good strikes and some good knees, man, I'm gonna get it done from there. But someone like Usman, where he has the level to drop, get that leg, bring him back down, do it, man. Who cares if he's stalling or if he's getting those underhooks? Keep trying. Eventually his arms are going to get tired. And again, 6 days notice, man. it's not an easy fight to take on 6 days' notice. So you know darn well that that Masvidal was fatigued in those later rounds.
Well,
Yeah,
they say they're gonna do it again.
It wasn't.
I hope so.
It wasn't the performance as well that we're used to seeing from Usman. Like I agree with Justin in the sense that if you look at the Tyron Woodley fight, it was heavy wrestling. There's a lot of thigh punching and whatnot as well, but every time Usman was locking his hands, he was pursuing the takedown. So I guess this kind of a pace for Usman, the strategy wasn't uncharacteristic of him, but the pace was maybe a bit uncharacteristic of him. And I've heard this point brought up several times by several different people. Maybe these Fight Island fights need to have like a little asterisk above them because nobody's really getting into proper training camp.
I can hear that, but at the same time, like I truly believe that I've seen some of the highest level of martial arts in this COVID period, which is interesting to me.
That's true.
I don't know if anyone else agrees.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well.
And
a lot of finishes.
I was also going to say a lot of fighters previously, before this, have done fights on short notice, and it's tough. I agree that it does make it a little bit harder, but are we going to start throwing an asterisk on all those fights as well? And I also think game planning. On the one hand, I was going to say Masvidal has definitely been game planning for Usman ever since he started getting on this tear, because he's been talking about getting the title for ages. But then also, probably so is Usman in terms of looking at who's coming up. And when they said, are you guys ready to fight, it was probably as easy as like flicking a switch. But I do think like there's a certain conditioning part that was perhaps a little bit missing from Masvidal, considering the way he looked against Nate.
Yeah, see, I agree with that. I agree there was a conditioning issue on Masvidal's part as well. And I don't know about you guys, I don't really have any desire to see them run this back because, in my view, and it's not because of an entertainment value, I just think that I don't personally see technically what Masvidal does differently. Maybe he fights a very disciplined fight, stays on the outside, and relies on his footwork. But I don't see him being able to keep Usman off of him, especially since we have the data for an entire five rounds. And I'd like to see the division move on.
Well,
the way he looked against just the way he looked against Nate, he didn't have the same pop in this fight. Like even against Nate Diaz, there was a couple of moments where you can tell there was a lot of respect between the two because he landed some shots against Nate where you can see he was staggered, and instead of moving in for the kill, he kind of backed up a bit. And watching the Usman fight, the first minute he had it, but after that there was no more pop in his step. He was you could see he was trying to do a shuffle step, step in with a straight, but there was just no pop in there, right? So you can tell there was definitely a lot of lactic acid in his body from the fact that 6 days notice, no excuses. But I feel like if they do run it back, maybe Usman does win it again, and the wrestling will be there. But I feel like if Masvidal has a full training camp and he's actually able to go 5 rounds at the pace that he showed against in the Nate fight, that makes it interesting in my eyes.
Yeah, I'd say another takeaway is that Usman is hard to hurt.
Yeah,
I think though the thing is I'm kind of in the middle. Like I truly believe that Gilbert Burns is the next fight. Like truly, I just think Gilbert Burns is a tough matchup for Usman specifically. But I do agree that Masvidal just like he was getting the better of the striking. So I'd like to see what happens if he's got better conditioning, if he's as explosive, because he definitely lost some explosiveness from the Nate fight to this fight. And I don't know if that's age or if that's conditioning or if that's I don't know what it is exactly. And I'd like to see what happens if he's got full train camp and he's as explosive as he was versus Darren Till or versus Nate Diaz. So I don't know.
And even one thing I noticed too, like with the way Usman was able to just grab a hold of like Tyron Woodley and all of them and kind of just throw them around like a rag doll. You didn't see that in the fight against Masvidal. He had plenty of opportunities to kind of take control and really kind of big brother, little brother kind of situation, especially when you look at the Tyrone fight and all the fights prior to that. And you can tell that, Masvidal's wrestling is very underrated because his center of gravity is very well, because there's a lot of times we can see Usman tried to go for the slam or pick him up and dump him. He was able to stay very low and keep his weight down and not get caught in those scenarios that a lot of guys prior with better grappling, in a sense, to, Tyrone and Masvidal. You'd figure that Tyrone has better wrestling, and he got just big brother, little brothered.
Yeah, there was one particular moment, I think it was the second round, where Usman likes to go to this body lock side suplex that he likes to do. And Masvidal just put his leg in there, slid it in between Usman's thighs, and stopped him dead.
Subtle little movement. I'm happy you caught that, because I've seen that happening, and I'm like, oh, man, that is – and those are the things that a lot of people, they just miss, right? They just think, oh, he just got out of that, right? But you don't see the subtle little detail to what he just did there to avoid getting slammed on his head. And it's, to me, that was probably just as exciting as any of the little exchanges they had on the hand, just watching that leg slip in and control that slam. That excited me for sure.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to run it back, because Usman's already talking about like how he wants to run it back but finish it standing this time, which I just don't see, because I think like there's a huge gap in terms of the striking, but yeah, I would argue there's even a bigger gap in terms of the grappling.
Plus the division is stacked. Like, it's stacked.
No, but that's why I actually think they're going to do it again, because I don't think it's stacked enough with stars to warrant another title shot for, apart from Burns and Edwards, like and maybe Colby, like everyone's like a couple fights.
But like Santiago Ponzinibbio can barely get a fight, and he's killing everyone. He's the boogeyman of the division.
I'm starting to think Mike's got a crush. Mike's got a crush on Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Every podcast,
I'll never forget.
The dude hasn't fought.
The jab.
The dude hasn't fought in like 3 years, and Mike's like, who we're forgetting about? Santiago Ponzinibbio.
We are truly forgetting about Santiago. Listen, he opened up Neil Magny with a jab. Who does that at welterweight? Think about that for a second. Welterweight.
Mike, I want to see what your other hand's doing. Because I'm not so sure when you start talking about Santiago Ponzinibbio.
It's a Christian podcast, and you know what I'm doing. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, though, like, the division is really stacked, though.
Dude, I think in this 170 division, if you don't give the next shot to Conor McGregor, you're crazy. You're crazy. Oh, anyways, moving on. How good did my girl Paige Van Zandt look? Woo! Man, that's why Instagram models should not fight. Instagram models should not fight. I'm just going to say it.
I met her one time.
Paige?
No, I'm kidding.
She had some good performances, like against lower level competition. You can tell she's got some game, but at the higher levels, it just ain't gonna go. You could just see her mind's not in it, right? Like, if your mind's not in fighting, I think she had a statement before the fight where she's like, I make more off promotions on Instagram than I do fighting, and it's like, you can tell just right there alone that it's not really, it's all a show for them, right? Like, her and her boyfriend, or whatever his name is there, Vanderford, it's all a show for them, right? It's all an image, it's all a ploy, it's all they are.
Make it on Instagram.
Hey, quick show of hands, though.
Argue every single day and hate each other, but the world loves us, so let's keep going, right? Like,
I get that vibe from them too. It's like,
for sure.
The camera's on. It's like, hey babe, act happy. Like, but show of hands though. Show of hands. Who follows Paige Van Zandt on Instagram? Show of hands. Justin, I can't see your hand.
No hands up, man. No hands.
David.
Wow.
No.
Wow. You guys are missing.
Like an African preacher once said, why are you?
I just recently looked her up last night, and I'm considering it. So,
one thing I want to say is that being that the UFC was trying to push her incessantly, because she's obviously, for obvious reasons, she's gorgeous, right? She's got that appeal. UFC's trying to push her incessantly, but now she's pissed off the UFC they're going to struggle to market her. Dana White, when asked about her yesterday, was like, I thoroughly think she should try her hand somewhere else. So being that she doesn't have the talent to really stick around in the top tier of the division, and the UFC's probably reached their limits as far as relentlessly pushing her. I don't know. I don't.
She's out of contract.
What's that?
Said maybe the WWE will hire her too. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's what I heard. She's out of contract. This was the last fight in her contract, so technically after this, she can go fight for somebody else. It sounds like Dana White's doing his Dana White thing. Same thing with Cyborg in terms of I'm not like, you can go do you. Good luck. So yeah, the WWE is a realistic option because she has been talking about that.
No, WWE, you guys both have it wrong. WWE, guys, she's going to join the ranks of Jessica Penne and some other chick whose name I don't know, and she's going to get an OnlyFans. An OnlyFans, okay?
Hilarious. Why can't she do both? She'll probably join Bellator, WWE, and get an OnlyFans. Why not? Get your money, Paige. Ain't no hate.
Hold on a second. Time out for a second. Jessica Penne has an OnlyFans?
She does. There's nothing great on it.
Wait a second. Hold on. Time out.
We're moving on.
I'm not speaking from experience, of course.
Is there any other fights you guys thought were good on the card before we move into some questions?
Oh, I have a couple notes actually. This Yuri Prohaska gentleman.
Yes.
The weird guy that yeah.
Took a lot of shots. Before you say anything, I just
sorry. Go ahead.
Before you guys say anything, I just want to say that I have been following this guy's career for a while because he was the light heavyweight champ in Ryzen, and the UFC will never say, they'll never say the name of a rival organization, so they'll always be like, oh yeah, he's done a lot of good work in the international or regional or whatever. But yeah, he was the light heavyweight champ of Ryzen, and normally he doesn't fight like that. Like there were similarities to how he fights. Like usually he's leaning over in his stance over his front foot like that. He's got a very good front kick. The flying knee is like a staple of every one of his fights. Decent enough boxing, not great on the counter, but a good pressure fighter. Knocked out King Mo Lawal.
I definitely think he got his hand on a bag of mushrooms, though, for sure. I think so. Very, you can tell he's in a different headspace for sure.
He kind of reminds me of like a kung fu version of Johnny Walker. Hands low, explosive.
Ooh, that's a fight I'd like to see.
Yeah. That would be a good fight. That would be a great fight.
Yeah.
You know what? Text that to Dana White right now. Let's send an email.
Yeah. The only thing I would say with him though is that like if you're gonna have your hands down, I would like to see a lot more technical versions of like no guard defense. So like I'm saying slips, rolls, pulls. It was a lot of herky-jerky movements.
Yeah, to me, it was very almost animalistic, like the way he would like get punched in the face and talk to him. And I've been kind of known for doing that too in my fights, right? You get into his zone, man. When that trigger gets flipped, man. It definitely, I seen what he was doing because he kind of. It was a lot of mind games, right? Because when you're in there and someone gives you the best shot and you look at them and you say, oh, is that all you got, man? Or you laugh or you smile. And, some guys don't react very well to that, right? Like especially at that level, it's like I gave this guy everything I have and he's still bouncing around looking at me, smiling and laughing. It's like, 2-3 minutes of that, eventually now your will is broken and you can break guys mentally very fast like that. I remember even one of my pro fights, the guy was low kicking me, kept low kicking, and I have hard shins. Like I can take a 24-ounce hammer to my shins and smack them off, no problem. And so they're very well conditioned. And I remember I was watching his face every time he'd throw that low kick. I'd check it and look right in his eyes. I see him wince, and then it would get worse and worse. And then literally I got to a point when I looked at him, I said, "Man, you're gonna break yourself on me." And I just seen him go, just sink. And just, then the mind games start playing, right? Then he puts me in a bad position. He's punching me. Looks like he's going to win. I get out of it. I'm leaning on him. And when I was leaning on him, you could feel him start wilting like shit. Like I gave him everything I had. I had him in trapped. Fighting is a mental game as much as it is physical. Actually, it's more mental than it is physical. So, I watched that last night. I definitely seen a lot of that. I think it was just like I said. I think the guy's on a spiritual journey, and he's found his inner animal. And last night we were getting to see him play around with it a little bit, and he got caught with some good shots, and he was able to eat it and come out and get that huge knockout. So he like he said, he has some things to work on, but I'm definitely very interested to see his next fight. And I didn't even know that he was the light heavyweight champion of Risen. So it was very. I gotta go check some of his fights.
Yeah, I'd recommend his knockouts over CB Dollaway and King Mo.
Oh, really? He fought? Wow.
Yeah, he's fought some vets. He's fought some vets, but yeah, this was definitely his most unique performance in my view. But just to spin off of something that you said, tell me it's not the best feeling in the world, feeling somebody's will break underneath you when you're in a fight with them.
Yeah, I'm not an aggressive guy. I never want to hurt anyone for no reason. But I won't lie, it definitely is addicting to. I'm a competitive guy, right? Like there's no better competition than your will against another guy's will. And as I stated before, physical is very minimal. It's if your mind is in it, if you're able to walk through anything and give your best, that's the ultimate high you'll ever have. And I think that's why it's hard for a lot of guys to step down from fighting, because there's nothing in this world that can ever match that feeling. I always make a joke with people. I said, if you could match that feeling in a drug, I'd suck your dick right now for it, kind of deal. It's as funny as it is to say that, but it's true that there's people that are heroin addicts and they go homeless over it. And I look at that and I'm like, must be good. I'm never going to touch that in my life. I kind of say the same thing to young guys who want to fight. I'm like, once you get that fight high, man, or Corey Jackson always used to have a line for it. My original kickboxing joke, kickboxing coach, he would say to go do another line of fight because it's a high, it's a rush, it's another level, man. Like you said, if you could package it, it'd be everyone's favorite thing.
I agree 100%, and there's nothing like it, and it's interesting that you said that, because a lot of fighters, they stick around in it for too long because there's nothing exactly like it, because normal life doesn't feel as good after you've experienced fighting. You think that's the reason why a lot of guys stick around a little bit too late?
And well, me too. Like my coaches, like I have some coaches that are very. Like Justin Bruckman is one of my MMA coaches. I mean, he's fought GSP. He was, a Canadian pioneer of the sport. And he says it himself. He's like, even I wake up today and I still feel like I'm the baddest man on the planet. And I think that's just the thing about fighters, man. That's why we do what we do, because we see who's the best. We feel the best. And it doesn't matter how good you get or how your body kind of breaks down, no matter what, your mind, again, always feels like it can beat anybody. So I think that's the biggest problem with fighters, right? Is you've seen it with the end career of Chuck Liddell when he eventually retired. You would see him in interviews after fights and stuff like that. He'd always kind of hint that, I'd take that guy, I could beat him. And you'd still see it after, he unfortunately, Tito knocked him out in Vegas there for Golden Boy promotion. And it's a fighter's mind. We always think we're the best, and there's no high that ever touches it. So it's a sad thing to watch, and that's why it's special when you do get to see a competitor find a passion outside of it, because there's really nothing else that touches it. Right?
Yeah. When God gives you a talent, it really becomes who you are. It defines your whole essence. It fuels your ego. It gives you confidence. Like there's nothing like it. Absolutely. Like when you're lining across from somebody on the field and you're kicking his ass so bad that he throws up while he's in his 3-point stance, like there's absolutely nothing like it.
All right.
So
okay.
I want to spin to something lighter real quick. Justin, you fight at 155, right?
Yeah, I've my first 2 pro fights have been at 155, and that's the lightest I've ever weighed since I was probably 13 years old.
What do you weigh right now? What's your COVID weight?
Oh boy.
I'm putting you on the spot, man.
I won't lie. I can reach 200 and no problem. I'm a big boy. You look at my family. We're all big chest, broad shoulders. We're all big guys. I carry. I can carry 185, 190 very, very well. So, naturally probably a 170er. I've actually been kind of thinking about that, contemplating that a little bit because I can make 55 with, intermittent fasting, strict dieting, and, I can do it. And, but I definitely feel stronger at 170, right? So, yeah, I'm a big boy. I'm a bigger boy.
Justin, why did you gravitate to mixed martial arts or kickboxing rather than like a regular sport? Like, why did you choose combat sports over any other sport?
I guess it was, I've played team sports before and stuff like that, and I definitely enjoyed them. But there's just something about martial arts that it's not only just been, something that's been able to fuel my confidence and give me some direction in life as far as a positive outlet, but it's been a tool for self development as well. Um, I got into the sport a very angry young kid, probably not going anywhere good with especially the attitude that I had at the time. And I was very fortunate that I was able to walk into a gym with a coach who was able to tame the fire and give me some purpose and direction in my life to kind of mold who I was bound to become in a positive light. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I enjoy other sports, but martial arts has been a lot more for me than just, being a fighter and learning how to hurt people and defend myself. It's been about, learning about myself, controlling myself, eating better, working out, just and using. And one thing too, I coach full time now too. And one of the things I really appreciate about this job is that I get to kind of hand down what's been given to me now, which is, I think, the point of life, right? Find your passion, find what makes your heart pound, and then use it to help other people.
Awesome.
Okay. I guess it's my turn. Well, oh man. But anyway, okay. So you mentioned the coach, and I think we both know him very, very well. Corey Jackson. Yeah.
Yes,
Man, see, a lot of people, including myself, like I can't speak enough good things about Corey Jackson. But it seems like he's had an impact on a lot of people. What is it about Corey that like helped you kind of, make that transition that you were talking about?
I think is just, he always talks about being a holder and being patient, right? And I think, I was a stubborn kid, I'm full of piss and vinegar, and he was just very patient with me. He was able to just break things down for me in a way that I was able to understand. And even if I didn't understand it at the time, he was patient enough for me to figure it out and kind of get a hold of it all, which is rare to find because there's a lot of coaches and you go to a lot of gyms and it's just it's a membership, right? Like you're just a body, you're just a number. And Corey sees you for who you are as the person. He doesn't see you for a number. He wants to help people. He always says he's the man on a mission, man, and that's very true.
So yeah. So you're 2-0 at the moment. How's COVID impacted your plans for the future as far as your MMA career?
Well, they kind of put a bit of a damper on 2020 for sure in a lot of ways because I had my doctor's appointment set up for January, the end of January, to get my requisitions, to get all of my blood work, chest X-ray, CT scan, all that stuff for my license. And then COVID hit. The entire world decided to shut down, and things are opening up now. But at this point, for me to get everything done, it's more so looking like probably 2021. Get everything done. there is some talks with the gym that I'm coaching at now, Cal Samra Gym in Bowmanville. If the gates open back up to be able to travel, the team's looking to go to Thailand and do some fights down there. So if that does open up, I'd like to try to get 1 or 2 fights down there before the year's up, just to stay fresh, just to get in the ring, feel it all, and do it all. So I can say I did do something in 2020. I have been consistent. We've been lucky enough that we've been keeping an online schedule for our students to keep them active and focused during the time off, which has been a success for them because it gives them something to look forward to. But it's also got me into the gym, right? So it's kept me kind of focused and kind of. I've been using this time a lot to kind of just refocus my life and really just look deep down inside and. As Corey, as Axel Jackson always says, where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? And I guess you can say I've really taken the last 4 months to kind of envision and see where I want to see myself in the next 5 years. And it's definitely been I've definitely found the silver lining in a very troubling time, I'd say.
Okay, so if you don't mind sharing, where do you see yourself in 5 years then?
Well, in 5 years, I have a plan. Obviously I'm 31, so realistically, I say I have 5 years left. I want to try to build a strong pro career, build my resume as far as that's concerned, and obviously all those small things. Get a house, get a property. Slowly build up the ladder, all those small things, and then. Then the next 5 years, obviously, I plan on just involving myself 100% into coaching after this is all done because you can't fight forever. And I definitely don't want to waste what I've spent 15 years on for sure.
Okay, so Justin, I kind of want to get into a moment that I kind of found was really interesting about your last fight, right? So the post-fight press conference, and we had it as a promo for your appearance, which I thought was probably one of the great, it was kind of one of the more, in my opinion, awesome post-fight quotes I've ever heard. That whole idea of I earned my place to be here, I paid my dues, and everyone who counted me out, that whole idea, it for some reason it hit me right in the heart, right in the chest.
Yeah, well, mainly because anyone who knows Team Action and kind of where we've come from to have me, especially because my amateur. I'll actually tell you a little funny story about everything and how how it panned out. It's actually kind of funny. My amateur career as a kickboxer, Muay Thai fighter is very prestigious. 2 national championships, 3 provincial championships. I'm an Eastern Canadian title champion. I've done very well as a kickboxer, but as an amateur MMA fighter, I only went 1-4. And my one win as an amateur, the guy, I think he shot in for a takedown, and I stopped his takedown, and I landed right on top of him, and he dislocated his shoulder, so the fight was stopped, and I won. And my 4 losses were just, I was the best way to put it, I was an ignorant striker who thought that everyone was scared to stand and bang it out. And, we made a point earlier, it's MMA, man. If someone knows if they can take you down and choke you unconscious, well, they're going to do it. And for me, I was humbled in that manner. So, I learned my lessons. And then, so 1-4 as an amateur, and I go apply for my pro license. I moved down south. I, earned my blue belt under Justin Bruckman. I go apply for my pro license. They weren't going to give me my pro license because of my amateur career. And they're like, Justin, we understand you're a good kickboxer, but you've shown like you don't know what you're doing on the ground yet. And in pro MMA, you're going to get hurt if you don't know what you're doing. So I did the ground games in Sudbury. So I literally went into Sudbury because I talked to the president of the commission, And he said, if you can show us video that you can prove you know what you're doing and you can handle yourself on the ground, we'll give you your pro license. So I went into that ground games literally fighting for my pro license. In the back of my mind, I know if this guy beats me or something, I might not be able to fight. And I already had the fight booked and lined up and everything. So I went into that fight. I won. I got the rear naked choke. I won in that fight. And then I go into my pro fight, and then I end up choking the guy unconscious with a rear naked choke. So, and that's why I was emotional. And I said that, man, because, there's like anything in life, there's people that are always going to talk down to you and say you're no good. And, those people are a dime a dozen, man. You can find them anywhere on any street corner. They're going to talk to you. But I was just happy in that moment. I listened to myself, and I knew what I could do, and I knew what I could accomplish. And for me to finish the fight that way, it was a stamp to a lot of people. Said that I was able to kind of stay quiet, be a holder, because I even had one guy that messaged me one time, talked a bunch of crap, said I was this and that, just brought in the pad records, and then he blocked me, so I couldn't even respond to him. And I'm kind of happy because at the time I probably would have responded very negatively and, fight fire with fire. But instead to just breathe it out and just acknowledge it for what it is and understand that how horrible that person must feel about themselves to even acknowledge something I did, right? So, I don't know. I just, like I said, I was just happy to do it, man. And I don't know. I was just, yeah, man, it was a good moment.
That's an amazing and inspiring story. For you, because you had such a crazy and established career as an amateur kickboxer, what was the hardest part about transitioning to MMA? Because I know you talked a little bit about the ground game, but can you talk a little bit about also like the psychological switch that you had to make in order from being like a top dog kickboxer to basically having to learn the ground game from scratch?
Again, a lot of it was just being able to control that ego and put it aside and understand that there's things to learn and and then there is another side to the game. I had some amateur MMA experience that didn't go my way, and I definitely felt what I was missing. And when I jumped into jiu-jitsu and I started doing that full time, it was I accepted it because I enjoyed it because it was something new. I've been doing striking for so long, so the increments of improvement get smaller and smaller as you go. And I found with jiu-jitsu, because I had that fire under my butt to prove everyone wrong and get good at the sport, not only just for myself but my team back home and everything around it. It was exciting to me and it was new to me, and I took it in a different. I guess I just took a different mental view of it all because I understood what I was doing. I understood why it was important. I understood the art form. I had a lot more respect for it after kind of getting smashed and choked out a couple of times. And as far as turning the switch, for me, it was just getting confident on the ground, knowing that I can get put into those situations and get out of it. I only turned pro when I knew I was ready to do it. I only took a fight when I knew I could compete. My first two fights were, it's all new, right? So you fighting those emotions and those new feelings and energy of, fighting around 500 people, around 2,000 people is quite a different energy shift. So I feel like as every fight progresses, I get more comfortable, and as I get more comfortable, I get more dangerous, and I look forward to this next fight because it's one thing I learned from my last fight is I fought a wrestler and I out wrestled him, and it definitely gave me the confidence to know that okay, now it's time to step it up and test myself against someone who's going to elevate me to that next level.
So, sorry, go ahead, Stefano.
Please.
I was gonna say, so you talked about kind of elevating yourself to the next level, and I'm not trying to instigate anything before anyone comes after me on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. You got before COVID, did you have anyone like specific in mind that you wanted to like really fight just to test yourself, or was it
And
just
why
kind
is it Michael Asiffo?
of
There's
you murdered me for the record?
there's a couple guys on the radar. Obviously, I'm just smart, right? Like I came from a very old school mentality, fight anyone, anywhere, right? And my amateur career definitely proves that. And when I moved down south, I definitely learned the art of strategy and how to build yourself and pick the right fights to build yourself up properly, because this is a professional sport. You are fighting some of the best people around. So you can't be ignorant and just jump in there and fight anybody, because you're not just fighting a Joe Schmo. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I got comfortable before I took a test. And there's a couple people on the radar. I know one guy from Quebec has called me out once or twice. I definitely feel like I can't think of his name right now. Trying to think of his name, but he's a French guy from Quebec. Fought. I think he's 2-0, 3-0. He just fought Adam DeFreitas. Zach Powell. Zach Powell is his name. He's called me out. That's definitely a fight that I'm interested in. I'm not afraid of anybody, man. And anybody who knows me knows when my mind's in it, it doesn't matter who's in front of me, man. You can punch me, I'll chew your fist off and choke you unconscious, man. I definitely feel like I found that space in my head now where, I'm comfortable. I know I'm competent. I know I can handle myself. I know I can get out of bad scenarios. And it's time to put myself up against someone who's gonna bring that animal out in me. And one thing that makes me understand and know that I'm ready for that test is my amateur career. Any fight where I knew I was nervous for a challenge, I always performed at my best. I always brought out the best, and I feel like I need that in my career. I need to face someone who makes me get up early in the morning and go for a run, because I'm worried they're going to kick my ass if I don't go for a run, right? And I feel like that's what I need in my life. So definitely, once I get all my medicals and stuff sorted out and my stuff in order, I'm down, man. I'm ready mentally, physically, and I've been putting a lot of work in the gym, especially on my own, just focusing, drilling things. There's been fight clubs. I haven't been sitting on my butt doing nothing, and I'm ready, man.
Zach Powell, if you're out there, man, we got our boy Justin Condie calling you out back. So let's get something going. Come get to the smoke.
It's all about it, man. It's the sport, and it is what it is, man. And for me, I've never regretted fighting. I've only regretted not fighting. At the end of this journey, it's not about the wins. It's not about the losses. It's about what you did with your time and who you faced and what you did with it. And for me, I kind of come to a place in my life where I don't care about winning or losing anymore. I want to do good for the people who believe in me, but at the same time, I know if I go out there and give my best and I fight my ass off, the people who matter are going to love me no matter what. So I'm ready to bring that Justin Condie out, and anybody who knows me knows that whoever faces that guy is not going to want to be walking tomorrow.
So Justin, so I'm relatively new to the sport, and I just recently found out that MMA is actually illegal in Ontario, in terms of amateur.
Amateur MMA.
Yeah,
Yes.
amateur MMA. So I wanted to ask, how important do you find those early amateur MMA fights? And like I asked last week, do you think it's better that fighters have a bunch of amateur fights before turning pro, or do you think it doesn't really matter? Let's say you have a stellar career as a kickboxer and you've participated in a bunch of jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu competition, and you've had one or two fights. Should you be going pro, or should you stick to like 10, 15?
For me, definitely the amateur builds the pros. It's the equivalent to going to college or university for a job, right? These amateur fights are building the pros. You kind of see where you stand, and you get to kind of walk the walk before you make that big red carpet walk, right? And it's very important. It helps people even just realize if they want to do it or not, right? Just going through the process of training and cutting weight and facing the fear of getting in the ring and fighting someone who wants it just as bad as you. For me, I feel like most fighters start to find themselves around 10, 15 fights because adrenaline is so high. I have a theory with seeing red and all this stuff that people claim a lot of. It's just like any drug. When you take it, if you drink too much booze, you black out. You smoke too much pot, you go to sleep. Adrenaline's a drug just like anything. And I think the first time you ever have a couple fights, you feel that adrenaline and it takes you over. It blacks you out in the sense that, that fight or flight is getting you. And I think you need to get used to that and accustomed to that. Because even as an amateur, I remember the first time I walked down the ring and I wasn't even nervous. There's people cheering and crowds going crazy. And then there's some guy looking across from me, very, very angry, definitely wanting to hurt me. And I was like, wait, I should be a little more pumped up. Right? Like, I'm thinking that. And that was a learning curve. I went out there, I fought, I did my thing. I think I lost decision that night. But, it was a learning curve because it was the first time I actually, did that drug and was able to float and, be present in the moment and not get taken away. And and that was around my 15th fight. And I feel like as a fighter, if you're really gonna venture off into this sport, you gotta love it. You definitely don't be doing it for the money. You gotta love the fight, and definitely build yourself up. Have a couple amateur fights. Some guys right away, like this guy's gonna be a star. If he's knocking the first 5, 6 guys out that he fights, okay. See how he does against the pros. Leave the average Joes alone, right? But yeah, amateur builds the pros, man. It's very important, and it's unfortunate that Ontario doesn't recognize that. We have amateur kickboxing, amateur Muay Thai, we have jiu-jitsu tournaments going on, but yet we can't do them all together. Just weird to me, and yeah, it's unfortunate that and you see it happen, right? Like you go on YouTube, you'll type in like worst professional debuts or whatever. There's one guy that's just hilarious. He has a mullet and undefeated at the bar, and he comes out swinging these purses for God's sakes, and that's he should have been an amateur because he would have learned a long time ago. You gotta keep your hands up and throw from your head, kid.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Man. So I guess, a couple more questions, but my question here is, clearly, you had a long journey to get to where you are today, right? And you've got some memories, and so I want to ask, what's the fight or kind of the moment in a fight that you had the most fun in, because you talked about kind of that adrenaline thing. What's like your moment where you're like, this is like really fun, I want to do this? What was the switch?
I feel like it was probably a couple of years ago. I was fighting in front of my hometown in Mattawa for one of the shows Corey threw. Just fighting in front of your hometown, man, having everyone cheer for you and go on. I just felt at home again in this one fight. I can't remember. I think it was Mike Wadowski. It was a 4th round fight. I was fighting him for the Eastern Canadian title. I went 4 rounds, and I remember I'd never done that many rounds. Like, I never gone into extra rounds before, right? So I remember going into that fight, I was just so tired, and the crowd just picked me right up and pushed me forward, and I just beat the living hell of this poor guy who can just take a punch like anything. And I don't know, it was the most free I've ever felt. He hit me, kicked me, didn't feel nothing. I was just moving through like I don't know, like air, man. It was definitely a good memory for sure. Anytime you get the opportunity to fight in front of home is a special time.
Thanks for joining us today, Justin, and recapping the fights and talking a little bit about your experiences with, with fighting and whatnot. And best of luck in the future as you whoop, what's his name, Mr. Pow Pow over here.
Zach Powell.
Zach Powell.
I also want to thank you.
Justin, it's been a pleasure, and I'll definitely follow the rest of your career.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate your time and energy, and all the best on your path.
Any shout outs, anyone you want to give a shout out to, and tell everybody where they can follow you on social media.
Okay, well, you can follow me on Instagram at King Condie. That's my tag. And I'll give a shout out to Corey Jackson, Team Action, everyone back home, everyone, the Rebel Alliance, Big Country, Cal Samrat, Bruckman, all those guys. We're all a team, and with the thing with martial arts, we all have different avenues to why we're coming in here, whether we're just doing it for recreation or we're doing it for competition or just to live a healthier life. We all do it to be better people, and I'm just happy to be in the group with of people that I'm with now.
Nice.
Respect.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Clearly, like, everyone knows, at least in the podcast, that like you're a friend of mine, and I appreciate you coming on and talking with us, man. So everybody on the Leg Kick, I'll threaten people for you. If you don't follow Justin on Instagram, I will personally come to your door and punch you in the nuts. That's basically it.
The old nutshell. That usually gets them.
Mike just won't nutshot you. He'll use your nuts as a speed bag.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your time, and again, thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
Nice.
Thank you.
Do I threaten the good people now?
Yeah.
You do, Stefano.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
this is what you done.
So not so many threats today. I just a little bit of sincerity here, guys. We've got some big things in the works coming for the Leg Kick. Some big video essays coming up. We've got some very important guests. I don't want to say anything until it's confirmed, but we may have a very, very famous guest coming in next week. So if you like what we do, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, tell your friends about it, like the video, spread it around, and hopefully we can do this more for you in the future. And if you don't, I'm going to come to your house and give your toilet an upper decker. How's that?
That was the most
I really don't
pleasant one you've done so far, actually. So
I remember you said something about arrows and chasing people down in the forest, and yeah.
It's gotten pretty dark some weeks.
I was feeling charitable, but I considered hanging them upside down and nailing them to a piece of plywood or something like that. But
yeah, that seems
an upper decker is unpleasant enough,
Man, all right. Well, geez, that's the end. So in this crazy mixed up world where everything is just terrible, COVID's making everyone stay outside. You can't have your hot girl summer or your city boy summer, so too bad. But you do have three things. You got life, you got family, and you got this podcast. Stay safe, drive soon. Stay safe, drive safe. See you soon.
Drive soon, guys.
Right.
Hey, drive soon, guys.
And big thank you for Justin for coming on once again. Follow his career at King Condie is his Instagram tag. And yeah.
Get out of here, people.
All right.
Leave us alone.